and the world to this notion that essentially leaves such a large portion of humanity open to abuse and exploitation by folks simply because they happen to be a little more talented, a little more fortunate, claiming better birth, having wealth, and so forth. I think that denial of the kernel of our humanity, that each and every person has a spark of God in them, that his will, therefore, constitutes something that in each person must be respected. That's what's been assaulted with abortion. It's being assaulted with these arguments. If you look at the underlying elitism that is behind this concern in Polanski's case, and I think it's very ominous in terms of the future, because we're moving into a world, after all, Stan, where science is in a way of producing technologies that could allow terrible abuses of people in terms of the ability to manipulate and control them. And if we depart from that ethical understanding, which essentially forbids those who have greater knowledge from exploiting those with less, those who have greater power from merely exploiting those with less, then we're going to open the door to horrors in the 21st century that will make the past thousands of years of human history pale in comparison.
You know, a couple things come to mind, like your comments, Alan. One is, we had women, feminists in this country, upset about a hostile workplace, about being in a position of power, that just your position might make it unfair to a woman if you're a man, and this outcry of anyone that did anything that in any way smacked of taking advantage of an adult woman, much less a child. Yep. And then you have China that egregiously and overtly takes political prisoners and slaughters them to sell their body parts, and our government conveniently turns its head and doesn't have anything to say. The hypocrisy. No,
but Sam, look at the agenda, though. I remember when I was working with folks in Missouri in the pro-life movement there to try to defeat that amendment that was put forward on stem cell research and on allowing the use of embryonic embryos to harvest stem cells. The mentality that's involved in that, as well as the one that uses the parts of aborted fetuses and things of this kind, is the very mentality that you're describing. Where does it come from? Well, I've tried to write about this in recent weeks on my blog site, Loyal to Liberty, and so forth, because I think it's related to a fundamental effort to shift our understanding of what we are as human beings. If you're going to look at human beings as nothing more or less than kind of complicated machines, right? Just matter in motion. That's all we are. If that is how you're going to regard people, then you will make material calculations. Who's useful, who's not useful, who contributes to this or that end or aim. Deciding what will be the end or aim will be the function and prerogative of power. Those without it will then be subject to use and abuse and manipulation, because after all, if you have to rearrange the pieces on the board in order to build what you think is going to satisfy your desire, well, that's the way it's going to be if you've got the power. Well, the whole purpose of the understanding of justice America was founded on was to get away from this notion that you could treat people like they were nothing better than things, that they were pieces to be manipulated and used and thrown away and discarded at the whim of those who happen to have power. Instead, you had to regard people as just that, persons, people who had in them the image of God Almighty, and who therefore had to be treated with respect, because we always have to respect the presence of God's will in them. As we move away from that fundamental premise of America, I think we're opening the door to enormous abuses. And it breaks my heart, Stan, to think that the people of this country, having been blessed by God's providence to be part of what was in some ways this oasis of liberty in the course of a dark history of human oppression, this time when there emerged a better understanding, not just of how you treat people because you feel like it, but how you treat people because it reflects the justice of God built into the universe itself, and therefore has the character of a law. That sense that establishes boundaries for justice is being thrown away. and it's being thrown away by the leftists who argue for abortion and other things that treat human beings as if they are mere things. It's being thrown away by people who say they're on the right, but take this view of libertarianism that essentially frees human passion to disregard all the constraints of justice as it seeks to satisfy itself. I think what the American founders were trying to achieve was something that would make people realize that you can't allow a world in which individuals can be exploited for the sake of the common good without any regard for their individual rights, nor can you have a world in which the many and the mass of the people can be exploited for the sake of a few, so that they can aggrandize themselves and satisfy their passions and ambitions. Maintaining the balance that is required for justice. That was one of the purposes of the constitutional system that was established here. But we're throwing away its premises now, and I think we see it in many ways in cultural issues, in political issues, as well as in issues in the economic realm that are all being decided on a basis that moves away from respect for the integrity of the person.
Alan, one of these czars, I don't remember his name and don't think I want to remember it, it's come out that when he was in a position of responsibility, he told a 15-year-old boy who admitted that he was having a gay relationship, a homosexual relationship with an adult man, instead of reporting it because it was statutory rape, he gave the boy advice as to how to continue that relationship. In the past, that would have been devastating. Today, it's a badge of honor. I mean, I think we're seeing before our very eyes a complete juxtaposition of right and wrong in America.
Well, I do think we're watching things come to a head, Stan. And this is something that I have talked about for many years. It's often hard to get people to see it in advance, unfortunately. But when you start moving away from fundamental moral premises, when you start with respect to things like abortion, discarding the notion that we're all created equal, and discarding the notion that a person is a person no matter how small, so that it's not a question of development and size and ability and this and that and the other thing that demands respect for the integrity of that person. You start down that road, and it's simply a matter of time before clever people start to come up with the arguments that will put you in the surprising position, or at least the position you didn't expect to be in, where instead of talking about a child in the womb or someone like Terry Schiavo in a coma who doesn't have, the quality of life that is required for real respect, and therefore she can be terminated, and so forth and so on. It doesn't take long before some clever person has formulated an argument, and you'll find the finger pointing at you, pointing at your gray hair, at your elderly years, at your infirmities, at your political viewpoint, perhaps, and saying, well, you're one of those people who's just not qualified to be here, and we've established a regime that gives us control of your access to health care, and we're going to let you die. So one of the reasons I think why we should fight hard to maintain a private sector is because we never want to live in a world where politicians and bureaucrats get to decide who lives and who dies, and we have no recourse but to kowtow to their whims. That world is going to be a world in which nothing like human dignity is respected, and we're getting a bitter foretaste of that every day now.
This is a terrible question. And of course, the left thinks that everyone on the right wants, armed revolution. No one on the right wants armed revolution. No one on the left, if they have any sanity, wants armed revolution. But there are some people that like to provoke in order to use that provocation as an excuse. I mean, Hitler comes to mind with the Reichstag fire. I'm going to say something, and you're probably going to be mad at me, but I believe if we see an attempt on our president, it will be done by the left and blamed on the right.
Well, I guess I'm one of those people, Stan, that likes to pray to God that we would not witness such terrible doings, that tries as much as I can to avoid even speculating about them, because I think there are certain ideas that are best kept out of our mentality. And this from one, by the way, I have profound disagreements with policies. I do not, in fact, believe that he has established his credentials to be